My special guest today is the man, the myth, and the legend. We're doing a live interview today with Mr. Frankie Finn. For those of you who don't know Frankie, you need to pay extra close attention. He's made his clients on Oprah, Dr. Phil, National Geographic, Major League Baseball, over $20 million and counting. His insights are going to be extremely fast-paced and chock full of incredibly powerful information that you've probably never heard before. How did you discover these powerful principles?
Well, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this because it actually came out of the worst possible circumstances. So imagine this, I'm sitting there, I'm sad, I'm completely deflated. In fact, I'm even crushed because I couldn't feed my family. I'd been dealing with these roller coaster income months and it just had been a lot more down than up. And so quite honestly, I was just defeated because despite my best efforts, I could just never really get ahead. So picture this, I'm wallowing in my misery, just trying to figure out what do I have to do. And I had a simple but profound thought that would forever change my life. And that thought was, what if I just interviewed other successful people and just asked them how they did it? And to my surprise, a lot of them were actually very forthcoming with this kind of, really profound information.
So when you started interviewing these people, what were these surprisingly life-changing principles you discovered?
I naturally assumed that they had to be the best lawyers, the cream of the crop. And I was very surprised because they were all very good lawyers, but when they reached a point when no one called because they were a very good lawyer, they had this choice they had to make, and they decided they were going to either become the best lawyer or have the best legal business. And while they sound similar, they produce profoundly different experiences in terms of like their daily experience. And so they shifted their focus to really attracting the best clients, having the best legal business, which ultimately led them into, many other studies of business. Second thing I assumed, they must have had a silver spoon, went to the best colleges and all those things, Harvard School of Business, and, got into some big law. And what I found is that it was completely the opposite. In fact, every single person I interviewed had some sort of breaking point and humble beginnings. I remember one guy was still living with his parents, because he couldn't afford his overhead. Another guy, didn't even have an office for 2 years. I was really amazed at how, humble their actual beginnings were. Third thing was really the time. Everybody knows lawyers who work 50, 60, 80-hour works. So I assume the most successful lawyers were ultimately going to be the hardest working, the most driven. And my jaw was on the floor because it was totally a case of work smarter, not harder. So they delegated as much as humanly possible. And when they had kind of went through these shifts, they focused on doing as little as they needed to do, except only the parts that only they could do. I naturally assumed they were dedicated lawyers, that they were very committed to the practice and the profession. But actually, most of them had a great personal life. They cared about their clients. And but it wasn't all about being the best lawyer. It was about giving their clients the best possible experience at their legal business. And a lot of them had time. I remember interviewing one lawyer who told me he only works 10 hours a week and golfs every morning while making millions. That kind of just blew my mind and conceptual reality of what's possible. Next thing I asked them, what was the one thing that made the biggest difference? And really, I had no idea what to expect. So, what did they actually say? And this was really interesting because they all said the same thing. Every single one of them I've ever interviewed said marketing. And so I don't mean doing SEO or all that spam you get from India 7 times a week. I mean specifically creating a message and a practice that's so compelling that their ideal clients really just had no choice but to hire them and only them and see them as different than everybody else. Next thing I wondered, which marketing thing are you using? And so naturally I was looking, is it SEO? Is it PPC? Is it AVO? And I was surprised that most of them were actually using all of these different strategies. And what was more important than the individual media they were using was the message and the strategy itself, not necessarily the tool they were using. That was very interesting because I find most attorneys are looking for a thing rather than the message and the strategy of how they use the thing. And then lastly, I just assumed, there's 1.2 million lawyers as of making this video and counting, and they're cranking out, tens of thousands every year from these colleges, that too much competition, what do they do about it? And, they calmly explained to me that the competition is mostly in your head, that if you have superior marketing, your competition isn't really a factor because you're only really competing, really for your client's trust. That was the number one thing.
If these people would like more information, what should they do next?
Well, there should be a really awesome free offer below this video to kind of learn these lessons and specifically how you can actually implement them. It's free for a limited time. So you just want to grab that because it's going to be, immensely valuable. And I hope you really enjoyed this video.